Today we're going to be building a Smitty Sled kit. I've done a handful of these in the last couple of years, and I thought I would record it today and share it with you guys. So we've got some 3D printed brackets we're going to use to connect the cross members to the skis. We've got some PTO pins that we'll use to quickly assemble and disassemble it. And then we've got a hardware kit for attaching it to the skis. I've already picked up a set from St. Vinny's recently and removed the bindings. So we're going to go through step by step and try to capture the whole process here. So before we get into cutting or drilling anything, let's take a second and figure out how wide apart we want our crossbars. And to do that, we're going to take a look at the length of our skis, and then we're going to take a look at our sled itself. And we want to make sure that the flat base of the bottom of the sled is going to be well supported by the crossbars. And what I mean is that we don't have the crossbars in the very center of the sled or the very edges of the sled. I transport a lot of my gear in 5-gallon buckets, which have a 10-inch diameter bottom. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that I position the rear crossbars within that rear 10 inches of the sled, and that's going to make the bucket itself be supported by the crossbar and not just the plastic of the sled. And I'm going to do the same thing in the front. So I want the crossbars to be within the front 10 inches of where the gear is going to ride on the bottom of the sled. So measuring up my sled and then taking those positions into account, it's going to leave me with about 24 inches between crossbars. And now we can decide on where we want to mount them in relation to the front and the back of the ski. We know we've got 24 inches between, and these skis themselves, we'll measure them out here, and they're about 70 inches. I want to make sure that I have my sled mounted to the rear of the center of the skis. And that what that's going to do is it's hopefully when you load your sled up as well, you position it so that your load is favored to the back slightly. And that's going to help keep the skis riding up in a few degrees, and it's going to make it easier to pull and keep you from diving down into snow or plowing through snowbanks quite as frequently. So here I'm going to measure it out, and I'm going to end up doing about, I break it into fifths. And so the sled or the crossbars is going to be about 2/5 of my ski length. And then I'm going to have about 2/5 in front of that and about 1/5 in back. And so that puts kind of the center of gravity of my sled, or at least this sled, about 10%, 15% behind center of the skis. So once we have this determined, we can come back with some masking tape and we'll measure it out on the skis, and then we're going to just put some masking tape over those positions. And what that's going to do is it's going to help us to be able to mark the holes that we'll be drilling out in the next step. Now I can grab my 4 feet and I can position them on top of the masking tape. I'm going to do my best using kind of my fingers as a guide on the left and the right side of it to center it widthwise on the skis. And then I'm just going to make sure, again, the tails of my skis are lined up, and then I'm going to make sure that the front and the backs of each of the feet are lined up for the left ski and the right ski. Once I have this and I feel they're in a good position, I'm going to come back with my marker and I'm going to make a small mark on the masking tape, and then I'm going to take it over to the drill press. So we've got the drill press set up over here now, and we've got our skis that we marked a minute or two ago. I got it set up right now with a 5/16 drill bit, which is the final size that I'm going to use. If you're drilling these out by hand, you may want to step up and drill a much smaller hole to begin as a pilot hole, and then work your way up to your final size. But for this, we've got a drill press. And because it's a tiny little one, I just stacked some scrap lumber off to the side here. And I am going to just slide this down here so that it can hold the skis for me. I'd probably be okay just setting them up there and holding it, because the accuracy doesn't need to be that precise, but this is just easier. So we're going to go ahead and drill these out from the top, and then we're going to come back around afterwards with a countersink bit, and we're going to drill out the bottom of it, and then these get the bases get mounted from the underside and then secured to the top with a nut. So we finished drilling out all of the holes on our skis now, and I switched out the bit in the drill press to a countersink bit. So this is a 3/4 inch countersink bit. What we're going to want to do is just to countersink it enough so that this screw head does not drag across the ground when we pull our skis. So these ones I actually drilled out by hand. I think I want to finish them off a little nicer and do them with the drill press. I think that's a better way. They would be fine the way they are now, but let's finish them off. So you're going to want to go back and forth to check the fitment of them, and just make sure that, you know, you can run your hand over it without gripping. We've got our drill press set off to the side now, and we can go ahead and install the feet onto the skis. So each of the feet has a recessed cavity for the lock nut to pop into, and then a machine screw that will be inserted from the underside. So we'll go ahead and pop some of the lock nuts into the feet, and then we'll position the ski on its side and start threading some of them in. We'll repeat this process for each one of the skis. All right, now that we've got the feet mounted to the skis, it's time to decide what we want our ride height to be, how far off the snow we'd like the bottom of the sled to ride. You obviously want it to ride high enough that it doesn't drag in the snow, but you don't want it to ride so high that it becomes unstable and tippy. For this setup, I'm going to have a goal of a 9-inch ride height, so I want the bottom of the sled, or essentially the top of the cross members, to be at 9 inches. So in order to do that, we're going to I have a couple of scrap pieces to illustrate this, but we have our crossbar member. So this is going to slide on top of one of the legs that we're setting the height at right now. And then the crossbar is going to come in and slide over the top of it. So if we wanted the sled to ride at 9 inches high, we need to just subtract 1 inch, the thickness of our cross member, and then we'll measure up from the ground or the base of the skis and mark that. So I'm just going to put mine in here. You can put your full 6-foot piece in there, and that way you're minimizing the amount of waste you have. Each set of skis is going to be a different thickness, and even the thickness for the front and the back of some skis can be different. I'm going to cut all 4 of these the same, so my sled might ride on like a 2-degree angle back, but I really don't need it to be that perfect. So we want 9 inches ride height, and that would mean we want to cut this at 8. So the leg will be 8, and then we'll have the 1 inch of the crossbar above it and the sled sitting on it, which will have the sled height at 9. So we can go ahead and we'll just make a small mark at 9, and then we're going to move over and cut all these. So, I'm sorry, a small mark at 8. 9 is the height, so we subtract 1 inch for the thickness of the crossbar, and then we're going to cut them so that the top of each of these legs is 8 inches above the ground. Now we're going to cut the legs down to size. Aluminum's nice and soft, so you can use something like a hacksaw. I created this little jig with some scrap wood. It just allows the extrusion to slide through, and then I made a little stop block. And each project gets its own so that the legs can be customized to each build. Alright, so we got it all set up, and I got some safety glasses on, so let's go ahead and cut these 4. And then we're gonna just clean them up with a small file after this. We've got everything cleaned up now, and we can put the legs into the feet, which we previously secured on the skis, and we can mark the positions for the holes that we're going to drill out to secure them to the skis. For this sled, or for this build, we're going to be using bolts. If you really wanted to be able to further take it down, you could use PTO pins here as well, and you could even further decrease the profile of this build. We're going to go around, and I'm going to mark the position to drill out on each one of the legs. If you're doing it by hand, make sure you mark it from both sides and drill each hole from each side. That way you can make sure that your bolt fits through nicely. We've pulled the drill press back out, and we're going to drill all the holes we just marked. Okay, so we've got the holes drilled in our 4 legs now, and we've got the hardware to connect them to the skis. Let's go ahead and do that quickly. Again, just like the other side, we've got a nut and a bolt. The nut fits nicely in there. And we can take one of the legs we just drilled, insert it in, run the bolts through, add a washer, and run the bolt through. Do the other side right away, and then you just tighten it up. There you go. Repeat that on the other 4, and then we will move on to the crossbars. Once we have the legs secured into the skis, all 4 of them, we can begin to build the cross members. So now we need to decide how wide we want to make our skis. So really the minimum width is the width of your sled. You want the entire sled to be within the footprint of your skis. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of rules. You can kind of make it as wide or as narrow in relation to the sled as you want. I like to sometimes put like a 2-man shanty on the side, or maybe a spud bar, or lay my auger across using one of the quick attach auger accessories. And so for this sled, I've got 6 feet left of extruded aluminum, so I am going to make it the cross members 36 inches across. Now, the nice thing about the brackets for this setup is they pass through in one direction. So you don't have to have your skis set as wide as your bars, and you can drill it out for multiple configurations. So I'm going to drill this so that I could set it up so that the skis are all the way as wide as the bars. So they'll be about 36 inches wide. And then I have some areas where it's narrower trails, so I want my skis to be able to be adjusted in. And so I'm going to make them about the exact width of the sled then. And so I'll have about 6 inches of the crossbars hanging over. And I can still use that to carry stuff on it. Just again, you'll have to be careful, a little conscious of how you load your sled up, because you want to have the weight as centered between the skis and just back of center, front to back, so that you have as stable and as easy to pull of a load as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that crossbars down to size, just the same way that I did with the legs. And then we'll come back and we'll mark those crossbars for how we want to drill them out. All right, so we've got our crossbars cut to length. And we've got our 4 crossbar connectors. So now we're going to set them up and mark them to be drilled. So what I find easiest is to just take them in what is considered, I guess, upside down. Just slide one over on each side. So you've got the 4 of them on the crossbars. Now what we're going to want to do, or what I'm going to do for this setup, because I want them all the way out to the end, I don't want any of that crossbar sticking out. So I'm just going to recess it in there just a little bit. And maybe I'll put some electrical tape or something over that. I probably should have cleaned that up a little bit more. So I'm going to have it just, maybe 2 millimeters in. And then I'm going to mark, and I'm going to drill these out the same way that I drilled out the legs, using a 1/4 of an inch drill bit. And all of these are going to be connected together then with these quick release PTO pins. And what this is going to do, it's going to allow you to break your sled down into 4 parts, 2 skis and 2 crossbars in under a minute. And then if you choose, based upon how wide you place your crossbars and how long your crossbars actually are, you can adjust it so that it slides and it can marry back onto the skis. So it makes it easier to carry or to store. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go through, position these. Go through, position them where we want them, and then we're just going to go ahead and mark each one of them. We got the ends all marked. We're back at the drill press again, and we're going to run some holes in these real quick. All right, so it's starting to come together now. We've got the skis with the legs attached. We've cut our cross members, and we've now drilled them. So what the next step is going to entail, we're going to add those brackets and then we're going to feed these pipes through with the same orientation as the holes so that we're able to secure them. So lift that up, slide it through, and we're going to do this on the same side, on the other side. So now we've got one. We're going to do that on the back ones as well. So this really illustrates what I mean by you can go as narrow or as wide as you would like. And so we drilled these out at the ends, like I said, because I intend to ride this as wide as possible, but you could run it like this, and you could put your shandy on the outside, and you could put your sled on the other side, or really anything you would like to do. So for now, we're gonna attach these, and then we're gonna position them and mark them. So we're gonna take some of the PTO quick release pins, we're gonna run them through. Just to kind of take a peek at what they look like. That's what we got for the sled then. So what I was talking about for mounting before, something simple just like this. Same here. This can slide back and be very versatile in any position you need. So now our last step is just going to be where this is sitting. We're going to take these and we're going to mark them in the same orientation that these pins are going. You're going to see that there's holes on all four sides. That is for what I was mentioning, for carrying or for storing. So just to illustrate that, you take this one off. And so you break these down and you want to put them in the bed of your truck or your car, or maybe you want to hang them. So depending on how wide you have these set versus how wide your crossbars are, maybe only one side fits. So what you can do is you can pull the pin and slide this down. And so you may want to add a set of holes right here as well. This gives you the ability to carry it or hang it or store it or whatever you may need to do. This allows for flexible configurations, but still to break down quite small. It can break down here, and even these could come out if you wanted them to. And so it really packs down pretty flat. You could throw this right on top of like a car and a ski rack still, because it would function just like a normal set of skis. We're gonna put these back the other direction that we had them. And we're going to go ahead and mark all these holes, drill them, and we'll come back and assemble this one final time. And we finished drilling out the legs. Now we can put it all together. I always pretty much leave these together and leave these like this. And then to assemble, slip one pair over there. One pair here. And we're just going to take some of these pins, pop them in. There it is, the frame for the Smitty. Again, you could add as many holes as you want along here and make this so it can adjust. But for me, this is how I'm going to run it. I've got these already on from previous sled builds I did, but these are how I'm going to attach it. I get these bungee cords. I drilled them some holes in the lip of the sled, ran them through, and my bars are 24 on center, and I did these about 26 on center. So I got one in front and one in back. So super easy. Go around and through, and then I just spin and go back through. Same thing here. Through, spin, and back through. So now you can still slide these a little bit, position the sled where you want it, but it's pretty secure on there. And because we're going to be running the ropes through the front of the skis, and then we're going to be attaching and tying the ropes directly onto the legs, there's no forces really being applied to the sled when you're pulling. So you don't need to run 30 screws through the bottom of your sled and get it super attached to the crossbars. So this isn't going anywhere. And we're going to be pulling from the skis themselves. So here we are. Essentially, this is it. I'll pull the phone off of the stand here and take a look. So the final product there, we've got the skis. We added the crossbars, brackets, legs, and feet. And so we got 2 of them. So we're gonna come in and we're gonna drill out 2 holes in the center of the ski. But if you can see it, we're gonna do it when it starts to curve up. And then we're gonna run a big 3/8 inch poly rope through that with maybe 10, 15, 20 feet of length. So we got a good amount of room between us and the sled that we're pulling. And then, yeah, so a little bit on each side for this configuration. Leaves me some room to put my one-man flip over. Yeah, that's about it. I'll update you with some more later. Thanks for watching my Smitty Sled build video today. If you got any questions, any tips, tricks for my next build, or saw anything I did horribly wrong and just want to let me know, leave some comments down below. Thanks.